I am back to once again highlight some awesome Sonic-inspired indie games, but this video is going to be a little bit different than the ones like these that I've done in the past, as I'm only going to be highlighting two games here, but they're two really fantastic games that I want to talk about, so this is going to be kind of more like a dual review where I go a little bit more in depth on these games. And yeah, these are hidden gems, games that have gotten nowhere near the appreciation they deserve, especially the second game I'm going to be talking about in this video. Definitely stick around for that. But the first game I want to talk about is Toree Saturn. I've talked about the Toree games on my channel before, made by Seafrog, a solo developer who makes really small games. And I'm a fan of Seafrog. I've enjoyed all their games that I've played, and they've developed a little bit of a cult following. People that like the previous Toree games, or like Super Kiwi 64. It's good stuff, but it might have you wondering why I call this game a hidden gem when clearly it does have a following. Well, it's because for some reason this game I feel like just hasn't gotten as much attention as a lot of Seafrog's other games. I haven't seen nearly as many people talking about it, I haven't seen a whole lot of coverage of it, and that's a real shame because this is Seafrog's best work. Because for me, I've always enjoyed the Seafrog games as like charming, fun, little cute experiences. You know, they're very short, usually like under an hour, and not really that much to them, but they're just nice. Toree Saturn, however, is different because I actually think this game kicks major ass. Two main reasons for that. One is the increased production value. This is by far the biggest game Seafrog has done. Still relatively small, but it's got a little bit more content, a little bit more levels, a little bit longer, and just in general, it's a lot more refined, a lot more polished. Music-wise, it's really cool. Lots of vocal tracks here that are all very good. Visually, the game is very nice looking. I've always enjoyed the Toree games. You know, they go for that low poly, low resolution thing, but now Toree Saturn obviously is trying to model itself more after Sega Saturn. Though, really, this is much higher fidelity than an actual Saturn could do, but whatever, looks good. And this game is a lot more blatant than the previous ones have been with its Sonic influence. I mean, just look at this Metal Harbor-ass level. In fact, the first level of this game, which is like a Metal Sonic-style race from CD, is taken from Toree Genesis, a game that Seafrog made to celebrate like Sonic's 30-somethingth anniversary, where it's a bunch of Sonic-inspired levels. So yeah, we getting blatant with this one, and I'm totally fine with that. So that's all cool, but the real thing that makes me love Toree Saturn is all of the new mechanics that have been added to the gameplay here, because the other Toree games are super duper simplistic. All you do is run and jump, that is literally it, but they've added two new moves to Toree Saturn here. You have a homing attack, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a sec, and then you have this like quick drop you can do that gives you a boost when you hit the ground. There's also these dash panels that have been added to the game, which function kinda similarly to what you would expect from Sonic, though a little bit more physics-based. And now with these things, Toree definitely feels a lot more like an actual Sonic-like game, because the older Toree games, while they definitely had a lot of influence from Sonic, the actual gameplay itself didn't really play anything like Sonic, but now we're kinda in that same ballpark. We see a lot of those homing attack chains and dash panels lining things up. A lot more fast-paced, intense, action-y, cooler than the previous Toree games, and in general I would say the game has a very similar like feel and flow to like Sonic Adventure 2. The mechanics and the design is kind of similar there. You know, very straightforward level design where there's kind of just the one way to go and you just gotta do what the game wants you to do. Lots of homing attack chains, lots of running forward. And it feels all really good here, so I'd say if you're a fan of SA2, this is definitely a game to check out. But here's the thing. That is still not what makes me love Toree Saturn. What makes me love this game is the one last mechanic that I haven't talked about yet that makes it way more interesting and cool. You see, when you're doing a homing attack, you can hit that, like, drop roll button, whatever it's called, and that puts you in this special state where you still have that property of the drop that when you hit the ground, you'll get this big burst of speed, but now, while you're in the air, you'll generate these stars around you, and the longer you can stay in the air without hitting the ground, when you finally hit it, that burst of speed will be much larger. But, as a wrinkle that comes with this, while you're in this state, you can no longer homing attack. This makes for an interesting risk-reward decision because the homing attack, as I've complained about throughout many of my Sonic videos, is a really dumb mechanic that takes away from doing actual platforming and replaces it with repeatedly pressing a single button. This game now says, yeah, you can do that if you want, but it's better to not take the automation and instead manually bounce off of these objects yourself because you'll get a big reward at the end for doing that. This is the kind of thing I'd love to see in the actual Sonic games. Like, if we're going to keep the homing attack, add an incentive to not rely on that crutch that enables me to go even faster. It also goes to show something I've said multiple times in my videos, that you don't even really need the homing attack. It's entirely possible to just bounce on stuff manually, and this game proves it. That also applies to the dash panels as well. While they do speed you up in this game, like in the Sonic games, they set your speed to a specific value, and you can go way, way above that if you build up a lot of stars and then get a big boost after it. So again, you're incentivized to not use the dash panels, try to avoid them and go around them to go even faster. And what's especially cool about this mechanic is that it's very easy to accidentally misuse it and kill yourself, because once you enter that state, you're in it and you hit that ground, you're gonna get launched off. And if you're not prepared for that, or you don't land in the right position or at the right time, then you're just gonna go careening off the stage and kill yourself. So you gotta get the handle of it, learn how to use it. Once you gotta go and you gotta keep that chain of bouncing around going until you're ready to land where you want to, where you're actually gonna get some use out of that boost. One of the cool things I like about the homing attack in this is that when you bounce off of something, the speed you had beforehand is preserved and you will keep going forward. So if you build up a bunch of stars and do a big launch, you can then immediately do a homing attack and launch yourself really, really far, and it has tons of cool shortcut application. And what's also cool about this mechanic is that it's not mindless. It's not always the right thing to do, because you lose access to the homing attack, and sometimes that's just faster because there's too many things to homing attack from, bouncing manually is a bit too slow, or maybe when you hit the ground there's not really a good application for that big speed burst, you don't really need it. So you gotta pay attention to the level design and think about how you can get the most use out of this. What's the right thing to do for the current situation? You know, you gotta consider, all that time you spend in the air to build up that speed boost, is that worth the actual speed gain that you get for it? Maybe, maybe not. You know, how much time is that actually saving you? It's way more thoughtful and turns this into a really, really cool speed game. Yeah, you totally need to get a grip on this advanced stuff if you want to get those shiny S ranks, and oh my god, it's so much fun. And can I also talk a bit about the extra stuff in this game? Because a lot of that is really cool too. First things first, extra characters or skins or whatever that you can unlock. There's a whole bunch here. But my favorite one is the one you've been seeing in a lot of this footage, where you're a little, white mask dude wearing, a purple outfit. It looks like Hat Kid from A Hat in Time fused with me, and it's awesome. I love it. And there's a whole bunch of mini-games in this game. There's this one where you're in, a Tony Hawk skate park using the mechanics to, build up points. There's a few that have, totally different gameplay that seem like maybe little game jam works that Seafrog made or something. There's this one where you're in a boat and it kind of feels like Kirby Air Ride. There's this one that's basically just freaking Knights. And again, it's a cool ethereal mask guy. I didn't know that Seafrog had such good taste, but I definitely approve. And there's also one that's, I think, a demo for the next game Seafrog might be working on that's more like a 2D boost-style Sonic kind of game, and it's pretty fun. I see some potential in that. Looking forward to it. And there's also the finale of this game, which I'm not going to show it, not going to spoil, because you really should play it for yourself. It's pretty cool. Definitely had some surprising things that I was pretty happy to see. Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff in Toree Saturn. This is such a friggin' excellent game, man. Easily Seafrog's best. And I gotta say, something I found really funny about this game is that Seafrog made a post about it being $5, because that's the most they've ever charged for one of their games before, and they're like, oh man, sorry I'm charging so much for this one, guys, but it had a lot more production value in it, and I did some collabs with some musicians and stuff, so had to charge a little bit more. Really, really sorry about that. And I'm like, dude, what the heck are you talking about? It's $5, and this game is awesome. You could have easily charged more for this. Anyway, yeah, that's Toree Saturn. Awesome game. Highly recommended. I highly recommend checking out all of Seafrog's games. They got a bunch of them. They're super cheap. All really good. They got a whole bunch of free ones on their itch you can check out, including Toree Jolly Jam, which is a Christmas night style demo for Toree Saturn because the references aren't blatant enough. And that's cool too, so yeah, lots of good stuff to play there. Now, the other game I want to talk about in this video, Seafrog, is a real tragedy because this is a phenomenal game that has flown completely under the radar. I have not seen anybody talking about this game. There's been very, very little coverage of it. And honestly, what coverage is out there doesn't make the game look that good because the people clearly don't know how to play it. Like, I was looking at gameplay of this game going like, I don't know, maybe, but I bit the bullet, decided to give it a try, and I'm so glad I did, because this game is now one of my favorite Sonic-likes I've ever played, and honestly, it's up there with, like, some of my favorite 2D platformers in general now. The quick gist of the game is that it's kinda 2D Sonic mixed with Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, but it also has a pretty unique structure where it's both a Metroidvania, but kind of also a collectathon at the same time, which sounds a bit messy, but it all comes together really well, and I'll get to that stuff later on, but for now, let's just talk about, like, the core gameplay and how things work here. So this game is all about riding on your wrench like it's a skateboard, and there's a lot of Sonic-like physics going on here with slopes and slope jumping, launching yourself off of walls and even ceilings and stuff. And that all works really well, feels really good to control. It's a little slower paced than what you get in like an actual 2D Sonic game. There's definitely some pretty notable speed caps here. You don't like build up a ton of speed going downhill or anything like that. But over the course of the game, you can get speed upgrades and start going pretty fast. It feels really good, even if it might seem a little sluggish and stiff for people that are used to Sonic. One thing I really like about this game is how initiating the skating works, because you can just walk around slowly if you want, but that's like never useful. There's a skate button, and you hold that down, and that'll make you start riding on your wrench. But that's also how you start skating on any surface in the game, not just the ground. So like rail grinding, for example, is you just hit the skate button when you're over a rail, and you'll start grinding on it. Or even just walls and ceilings. If you're going against them, you can just hold the skate button and you'll start riding along them. And just like Sonic, you'll like stick to the surface you're on, so you can be like falling against a wall, start riding on it, and then like ride the curve back around up the other side. Super duper cool. And with just one very elegant button press, you can control exactly where you want to go and how. Then you also have the boost meter there in the bottom left, which lets you go much faster and lets you get much bigger jumps, either really far jumps or really high jumps, depending on the angle of the terrain you're jumping off of, just like a Sonic game. And this is where the trick system comes into play, because doing tricks and building up combos fills up your boost meter, and the bigger your combo is, the faster you can fill it up, and thus the faster you can go. So naturally, you want to be doing tricks as much as you possibly can. And the system for doing tricks here is really simple. You don't, like, pick what tricks you're going to do. That doesn't really matter. Just the fact that you're doing tricks and keeping up your combo is what's really important. To do a trick, all you have to do is let go of the skate button when you're in the air, and he'll automatically pick a trick to do. And as you'd expect, you can grind on rails and interact with level objects to do more tricks and add to your combo. Another trick type I like is doing a perfect jump, which is like right at the peak of a ramp, jumping at that time when you're going to get the biggest jump possible. That also counts as a trick, which I think is a really smart design because it gives extra motivation for the player to try to do something that's just generally good. You know, when you jump off a ramp, you want to get the highest jump you can off of it, so you're already trying to do that anyway, but this now gives you some extra motivation and some confirmation that yes, you did the perfect jump, you nailed that. Really smart design. I feel the same way about doing tricks in the air. The fact that you let go of the skate button, it just kind of becomes an automatic thing you do. You know, you're skating around all the time, but then you jump and you just let go of it, so you start doing a trick. But that also means that you're never gonna accidentally, like, stick to a wall that you don't want to because you were just holding the skate button without thinking about it. It naturally steers the player away from, like, things that could make the game maybe a bit clunky without you even noticing it. And then manuals feed into that system again, because to maintain your combo, you have to do a manual when you hit the ground or wall or ceiling or whatever. And to do a manual, you have to hit the skate button right before you hit a surface, which again is something that you already naturally want to do, because you want to maintain your air trick as long as possible to build up as many points as you can, and only start skating when you have to. So again, it just feeds into rewarding the player for playing in the most optimal way. It's a really elegant design that gets so much out of such like a simple control scheme and system, Because just watching my gameplay, I think you can get the idea of this. You have that kind of 2D Sonic desire to just naturally flow through the space because it's fun and it feels good. You know, riding those slopes, getting those big jumps, building up a lot of speed, maintaining your momentum as you launch up into a ramp and then ride that into a curve and redirect your speed in a different direction. You have that kind of fun, which is proven to be really engaging in the 2D Sonic games, combined with another type of gameplay that's been proven to be really fun in the Tony Hawk games, like doing these big trick combos. You know, when you're playing Tony Hawk, and no matter what you're doing or where you're going, you're always manualing around and doing tricks every time you jump, just because it's cool and fun. Same thing in this game. As you're doing these big jumps, you're always trying to maintain your combos, always trying to do perfect jumps, always trying to land those manuals. It makes it so that just moving around this game across two different types of gameplay is incredibly fun and engaging. And of course, these two different design elements feed into each other because by maintaining your trick combo, you get lots of boost meter, which you can then use to fly around the area even faster and do even more cool stuff. Absolutely brilliant design. I freaking love it. It is so much fun just skating around these levels. And all that is just with your base game starting moveset. Remember, I said this was a Metroidvania. You unlock more abilities as you keep playing that let you do even more cool stuff. There's all these magnetic objects you can interact with, like these magnetic walls that you can ride along and they maintain your momentum, so you gotta jump into them in the right way to get the kind of trajectory you want, to get where you want to get to. You have these really interesting, like, circular bouncing things that only launch you when you hit the skate button, so you can kind of time it of when you want to activate it to change how it's gonna launch you around. And there's a bunch of other really cool stuff, like they really play around with the systems in really cool ways here. But probably the most impactful move that you get throughout the game is a little air dash you can do, which has so many, like, crazy applications, both intended and maybe unintended. Because obviously you can use it to extend your jumps and get more distance, but also if you hit a surface while doing the air dash, then you bounce off of it. And this can be used for lots of cool, like, tricky stuff where you need to start getting on a ceiling, so you bounce off of a wall, so that way you get that little bit of extra height and horizontal speed to start skating on the ceiling without needing, like, a slope to transition you. Or, in fact, if you just time the air dash just right, then you can move along the underside of a ceiling and just go right into skating on it. But here's the really, really cool one. So slope jumping in this game works mostly like how you would expect. You know, if you're on a ceiling and you jump, you'll jump downward. If you're going up a wall, then you'll jump upward. But interestingly, if you're going down a wall then you jump, then you still jump upward the same way you would if you were going up a wall. And this alone has a lot of cool applications for just doing, like, big crazy wall jumps to get some height if you need it. But also I realized, wait a minute, could I use this to, like, infinitely climb a wall that I probably shouldn't be able to? And the answer is yes. If you ride down the wall, immediately jump off, and then air dash back to the wall, you can just loop that over and over and just gain as much height as you want. Lets you do a bunch of sequence breaking and get to areas earlier than you're probably supposed to. Super cool stuff. Speaking of sequence breaking, let's talk about this game's structure a little bit, because it's super cool and kinda unlike anything I've ever played before. Because the way this game works is it's kinda level-based. You have three main areas, these three different ships that you can go to, which, by the way, one thing I like about this game, there's, like, no loading screens or anything in it. It's all, like, one connected world. You have your, like, home base ship, and to get to the other ships, you just get in the cannon and launch, and it's, like, totally seamless. You just go straight into gameplay. Really awesome. But then when you're actually on the ships, they have many different levels for you to go through. Each is a different hull, like hull A, B, C, and so on and so on. And within each hull, your objective is to open the door to the next hull by fixing all these, like, leaky pipes. So they're kind of like your collectathon, like Star or Jiggy in a way. In order to continue to progress, you have to fix all the pipes in the area, so you get these big, open-ended, like, skate park-style levels, and you gotta go grab all of them. But there's also these sub-areas, these doors that you can go through, where sometimes you'll get, like, a linear obstacle course challenge that one of the pipes will be at the end of that, or you might just get something to upgrade your character in some way, so it's valuable to do pretty much all these you run into. But sometimes they give you little challenges, like doing a trick attack, like score combo thing in a time limit, or you have to kill all the enemies within a time limit, or cool little things like that. And these are all really fun, really well designed. None of this stuff is, like, annoying or gets in the way of the game or anything. And then once you get all the pipes, you can move on to the next area and just keep on going with that. And every time you get to a new, like, major area, a new hull, they start to introduce new elements to the game. They'll add, like, a new enemy type or a new gimmick for you to interact with, or they'll give you a new move or something. They always change up the game in some way. And of course, there's collectibles to find, little secret areas all over the place for you to look for. This game's got like a Hollow Knight, Paper Mario like badge system, because every indie game these days needs to have this, and it works well here. I actually found myself swapping around my badges a lot more frequently than I usually do in these kinds of games. And the Metroidvania elements come in because you might be on a ship, but you'll eventually hit like a dead end where you just can't do any more because you need an ability you don't have, so you have to leave and go on to one of the other ships and do a couple of different levels of that, and then you unlock that new ability that can let you go back to the other ship and now like finish it off or get further through it or whatever. And all the different ships, of course, have different gimmicks of how they play and what they do. Like the second one, all the pipes have like a specific order to them, so you gotta go to number 1, then 2, then 3, and that changes how you prioritize where you go and what you do. And I gotta say, I am really impressed with the design of this game because, like, they really flesh out all the systems here. Anytime they introduce a new ability or a new level gimmick or a new enemy type, they, like, really get the most out of them. And they're also not afraid to challenge the player. Like, this game does get pretty tough at times. Like, it was really utilizing the mechanics to the fullest and expecting me to do all this fancy, like, wall rides into big jumps, into air dashes, into ceiling grinds. It's not like a super duper ultra hard game or anything, but it's not messing around. It's like, yo, we got these mechanics and we're gonna make you use them. And I love it for that. I actually found myself dying in this game a lot, and that's one thing that's like kind of annoying. This game kind of does like a Souls thing where it's like really punishing when you die. You go all the way back to the main ship and you have to go back to the level you were in, and there's like fast travel to speed up a little bit, but it just feels unnecessary. Like I feel like I could just restart the room, but not that big of a problem or anything. I guess while I'm getting criticisms out of the way, one other small thing that I don't love about the game is it's a little too stop and starty for my taste. There's a lot of stuff that just interrupts the gameplay. Like every time you go to a new hull, there's a little cutscene of like, oh, here are all the challenges that await you in this new area. Or when you get some of the collectibles, you get this like long cutscene you have to sit through. And I just wish you could skip this stuff so I could just get back to the game. Again, not a big problem or anything. It's just while I was playing, I was like, dude, I had a good flow going. Stop interrupting me. But something that I don't want to criticize this game for, in fact, I want to praise it, is boss fights, which if you've watched me for a while, you know I kind of have a thing about boss fights and platformers, because in my opinion, they usually suck, because they lock you in a tiny room and have you sitting around doing nothing as you wait in between the attacks forever, and it's boring. But Seafrog completely avoids all of the typical problems that we see in so many platformer bosses and makes them a real highlight. They are super fun in this game because they lean into all of the normal gameplay and design that this game is all about. The bosses are more than anything just big platforming challenges. The boss arenas are these really big areas that have lots of slopes and lots of opportunities for you to skate around and do stuff, and the bosses move around the entire arena, and you have to chase them down to land hits on them, and in the meantime, you have to avoid hazards and obstacles and attacks from the boss. And they all have really cool, like, extra design elements to them to make it interesting and builds off of, like, what you were using throughout the world leading up to the boss. Like, the one in the chicken theme world has this, like, rage meter that builds up, and one of the ways it builds is if you ever damage any of the enemies in the arena. So you want to avoid touching the chickens or the eggs or killing anything, and that makes it interesting. You're dodging the attacks, trying to get to the boss, trying not to kill anything. Like, lots of cool stuff that they play around with that turn these into, like, big skate park fights. They are really awesome. Legitimately some of the best bosses I've ever seen in a platformer. And also cool, the final challenge in the game is not a boss fight. I'm not going to show it because it's cool and you should play the game for yourself. But it's one final, like, big obstacle course gauntlet that you gotta do, and it was great. It had cool spectacle to it. It was a really fun, challenging gameplay sequence. I thought it was just fantastic all around. And overall, this game is a real marvel to me. I was thoroughly impressed by how much I enjoyed it as this little game that, like, no one's talking about, no one even really knows anything about. It's like, dude, this game is like a secret masterpiece. You know, a couple of minor problems here and there, but really nothing major. It is a little bit on the buggy side. I did encounter a number of issues, but nothing major, nothing that got in the way of playing the game. And it's also worth noting that the game has a pretty good amount of meat to it. It took me a little over 8 hours to do 100% first playthrough, which I think is really good for like a 2D action platformer like this. Visually, I also think that the game looks really nice. I like the low poly style it goes for. I like the little frog dude you play as. I think he's cute. There's not much story in this game, but that's clearly deliberate. They know that this is like a gameplay first kind of thing, so they don't bog you down with a bunch of crap you're not going to pay attention to. I swear, man, this game is like everything that I personally look for in a video game. It almost feels like I came from the future and designed this game for myself because I just love everything about it. And I hope I did a good job of showing off and explaining why I love this game so much. And for the love of God, pick this game up. It's so cool, and it's horrible that like no one's talking about it, no one's playing it. It is way too good for that. And as always, I'm gonna keep my eyes peeled for more cool indie Sonic-like games just like this that maybe fly under the radar, or really just cool games in general. I'm gonna do my best to show them off, and if you're interested in seeing more of that kind of stuff, then I hope to see you around in the future.